Hi, my name is Michelle Wei, and I'm an undergraduate researcher at the University of California, Irvine. Over the past year, I've been studying first-generation Taiwanese American identity formation with my faculty mentors, Dr. Wu and Dr. Castellanos. Throughout its history, Taiwan, also known as Formosa or the Republic of China, has taken on many names and identities. The Dutch, Portuguese, Japanese, nationalist government, and the People's Republic of China have all staked its claim on the small island. Located off the coast of the Asia continent, Taiwan is home to 23.5 million people, with more than 95% of the population identifying as ethnically Han Chinese, originating from mainland China, and 2.3% identifying as Taiwan's Aboriginal population, who have Malayo-Austronesian backgrounds. Immigration from China to Taiwan has been occurring since the 17th to 18th centuries, when the Hakka and later Hoklo immigrated to Taiwan. Following defeat in the Chinese Civil War, the Chinese nationalist government reclaimed Taiwan from Japanese colonization and established a Republic of China and martial law. This group, known as Waisenren, or people born outside of Taiwan. Due to the Hakka and Hoklo immigrating centuries prior, they saw themselves as Zenren, or native-born Taiwanese. However, the Chinese Nationalist Party began to socialize the Zenren as Chinese, teaching them curriculum that centered Chinese culture and history. Following the end of martial law in 1987, the inclusion of native-born Taiwanese in the government, and the growing democratization of Taiwan, the education curriculum shifted to focus on Taiwan's culture and history. This shift will be important to note as my sample population was chosen based off this difference. Taiwanese identity in America has been shaped by the non-recognition of Taiwan as a nation and structural and societal limits set in place by other world powers. Simultaneously Chinese American and Asian American, Taiwanese Americans are often categorized as Chinese or other Asian. Thus, much data about Taiwanese Americans often comes from surveys of Taiwanese in Taiwan. A 2020 survey reveals that 83.2% of people living in Taiwan identify solely as Taiwanese. According to the 2010 census, there are about 200,000 Taiwanese in America. In comparison, the Overseas Community Affairs Council of the Republic of China counts 1 million Taiwanese in America in their most recent 2019 statistical yearbook. The problem is that there is a lack of knowledge about Taiwanese Americans. My project is much more expansive and I take into other accounts of identity, but for the presentation today, I'm focusing on how most literature fails to consider the experiences of the generation that immigrated and how the acculturation process may affect Taiwanese American identity, as well as how the non-recognition of Taiwan as an independent nation affects Taiwanese Americans. The purpose of the study is to identify the influential factors that shape one's identity among first-generation Taiwanese in America and to define what it means to be Taiwanese. I utilize identity theory and social identity theory as a framework for understanding Taiwanese identity. The social, political, cultural socialization of being Taiwanese/Chinese in Taiwan and experiences of immigration to the US all contribute to these identity and social identity factors, which then shape Taiwanese identity. For my methodology, I conducted 17 semi-structured interviews that were recorded via Zoom. My interviewees included 9 Taiwanese Americans born in the 1960s and 8 Taiwanese Americans born between 1995 and 2005. The older generation immigrated at slightly older ages compared to the younger generation, with the exception of 2 outliers. I want to share some interesting quotes that I found compelling. Here you can see how one participant felt very rooted in her ethnic Chinese culture, going so far as to say that Taiwan was a China that was lost. Here you can see how this participant is largely impacted by the name of Taiwan, and that saying ROC dismisses her identity as Taiwanese. This participant still struggles with her identity despite immigrating over 20 years ago. She doesn't feel a sense of belonging to the United States. And finally, you can see how this participant felt very affirmed in her Taiwanese American and Asian American community when she had entered college and was able to connect with her peers. In terms of identification, the older generation, a majority of them view that their Taiwanese identity as part of the larger ethnic Chinese identity. However, they make a clear distinction between their home country being Taiwan and their ethnic roots being from China. In the younger generation, nearly all of the participants felt very strongly about their Taiwanese identity and did not feel a connection to being ethnically Chinese. The younger generation is largely impacted by social identity factors, meaning that their Taiwanese identity can be enhanced when they're involved in a Taiwanese organization. Conversely, the older generation is largely impacted by identity factors, meaning that their personal identity stems from these personal relationships and feelings of nostalgia towards their childhood in Taiwan. Some participants also expressed that they felt that they belonged to a third culture, which is neither Taiwanese nor Taiwanese American/American. Some potential explanations are that individuals who felt rooted in their ethnic Chinese roots, at least one of their parents was born in China. Additionally, for Taiwanese Americans who did feel like they were Americans and belonged, their immigration age was often in their teens compared to those who immigrated in their 20s. Issues relating to Taiwan must take into consideration the differences in generational thinking and the heterogeneity of Taiwanese identity. College campuses must also offer ethnic organizations, in this case, a Taiwanese American organization or club, to help further promote the exploration of Taiwanese American background and understanding of one's identity by college students. Some limitations are that there was an overrepresentation of women and overrepresentation of participants whose parents came from China. There's also a very limited number of participants, meaning that these results cannot be generalizable. Future research may also focus on the experiences of male Taiwanese Americans who have served in the Taiwanese army but immigrated to the US in their later years. And other future research may also include the impact of a pan-ethnic identity and racism towards Taiwanese Americans. Thank you very much for listening to my presentation, and I hope you have a great day.